I guess I'll start with housekeeping stuff. So these slides will be available as well as the video of this recording after the webinar, probably late today or tomorrow. And then you can ask questions during this time. Allison is in the room with me. Hi, Allison. And she'll interrupt me if she sees something kind of hot to talk about. Otherwise, we'll gather up questions and kind of try to ask and answer them at the end. And if we don't get back to them in this presentation, we'll follow up one-on-one as appropriate. I am super excited about this webinar. I'm super excited about no, pop up. I'm super excited about AI, and I'll give you kind of the history on AI today, and I'll tell you about kind of where AI is today and kind of where AI is moving in the future, so you can get some context overall. And then I'm going to apply the general stuff that we talk about AI into what we're trying to do to kind of harness the power of AI for events and try to help people through all of that jungle of AI. So AI history. So this wave of AI kind of started in 2009. And this professor had a project where she got a bunch of pictures and she had human beings label those pictures and build up quite a large database. I forget how many, it was hundreds of thousands of images though. And then she initiated a contest or a collaboration with a bunch of universities, did a contest to try to come up with a model that would be able to look at an image and try to understand what it was. That contest was won by a team in the University of Toronto with something called AlexNet. And it used a neural network, and I'll explain what that is in a minute, that had 60 million parameters and 650,000 neurons. And I'll explain what a neuron and what parameters are in a minute. And some of these folks here that are labeled here are famous people now. They're leading some of the leading AI labs and things like that. And they did this on NVIDIA chips. And NVIDIA chips at the time were graphic processors and allowed for kind of parallel processing. So they could do a bunch of calculations all at once. So they were really good at math. And it turned out that to do this type of processing for AI, you want to be able to do it in parallel and do it very fast. And there's a bunch of math that's involved in that. So this kind of kicked off the machine learning kind of age from 2012 to 2022. You saw that come out of RunSignup in 2016 when we introduced our photo platform with automatic bib tagging. And so we just fed those to a bib tagging algorithm. Initially, we used Google, and then we transferred over to a different machine learning model that was a little bit better. And it's worked fantastic. You know, we host somewhere around 25 or 30 million photos, and many of those are tagged with bib numbers, and so people can find their photos. So that was kind of that age. So OpenAI founded in the end of 2015, and that was kind of the first effort to try to take this AI stuff that had started to mature and try to figure it out. Google for a while they had bought a small company in England called DeepMind, and they had been doing really the big research work in AI. And in 2017, they kind of kicked off this large language model revolution with their Google Transformer paper. So they basically came up with some algorithms and math that allowed AI models to try to figure things out better and to understand words and context and put all that stuff together. In 2021, NVIDIA revenue was $16 billion. So NVIDIA had started to see the benefit of these AI models and people buying their GPUs. In July of 2022 is kind of the first real release of AI, of this new generation of AI. And it was a company called Midjourney. They're still around. They do image processing. I still remember playing with it when it first came out. And, bicycles had square wheels and people had 6 or 7 fingers on a hand. And it was really wacky. Airplanes flew into each other. It was not all that it was not all that good. And then in November of 2022, ChatGPT released to the public, and people figured out that, geez, this has general intelligence, and that's kind of the term that was used at that point in time. And you could type stuff in, and it would answer it back, and it was surprising how wide the knowledge base was. It was surprising how it understood the question that you were asking and form its responses. 2024, of course we've played with it, since those early days, and produce some content. And Johanna or Allison might use ChatGPT to write some content in a blog or to help them with some ideas and stuff like that. 2024 is when we started using it for development, and we saw a minor productivity improvement. So today, NVIDIA revenue the past 12 months is 148 billion, so about 10 times what it was only 4 or 5 years ago. And ChatGPT has gone from nowhere in November of 2022 to be the 5th most visited site after Google, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. So a lot of stuff has happened pretty quickly. And if you pick up a trend here, it's actually happening quicker. And we'll talk more about that. So how does AI work? It actually works a lot like human beings. So what it does is it takes inputs into a transfer function, and then there's an activation function. And this whole thing is called a neuron. And the inputs are those parameters that we talked about in this last slide, where there were 60 million parameters that came in, and there were 650,000 of these. And then what happens is you put these neurons together in a neural network, and it works. And this is actually modeled after the human brain. So here's a little diagram of the human brain and how the little cells kind of function together to create a similar type of thing here. On the right-hand side is my adorable, wonderful, perfect granddaughter, Emma. She's a little bit lacking in hair, kind of like her grandfather. So she's 15, 16 months now, and it's remarkable to watch her. And I'm learning about all this AI stuff at the same time that I'm seeing my granddaughter kind of learn and grow up. But her little neurons and neural network are getting formed. And so when you see a baby, they pick stuff up, they put it in their mouth, they're trying to understand it. And as she gets older and older, she starts to understand things more and more. And that's the exact same thing that's happening in these AI machines. So Emma is training herself about the world and about all these different inputs that are happening, and then what she can do with those inputs. So today we got a video of her at this little PlayStation where you push a button and it makes music, and she starts to dance, right? And so she's putting together a whole bunch of different sequential things that are happening, and that's exactly what the AI things are doing. And the AI LLMs are learning, well, they're actually learning faster than Emma, but Emma's doing fine. So AI today. So just this year, Meta, Microsoft, and Google will spend $200 billion on AI. And the general intelligence models, the large language models, are maturing extraordinarily quickly. You look at all these version numbers here, and they're coming out with major version releases, I mean, significant version releases and subversion releases, like on a, on a quarterly basis and sometimes on a monthly basis. So a good kind of mark that happened in the industry that got a lot of attention was back in December when the Chinese model DeepSeek came out, and it had 670 billion parameters. So if we go back to 2012, it's actually 10,000 times the number of parameters that they're starting to put into this. And they actually came up with kind of two kind of new methods for doing AI that kind of layer on top of the basic LLM. One's called chain of thought reasoning. So basically being able to chain different thoughts together and to be able to reason them out and to determine whether A or B is the right answer. And then the second thing that they've done that they introduced is this idea of mixture of experts. And the mixture of experts is basically taking kind of different kind of mini LLMs and running them through, running a question or a learning process through and coming up with different answers, but figuring out which one is the best out of that. And basically what it allowed them to do is kind of putting those two things together allowed them to parallelize a lot of the learning. And so they were able to do that learning with a lot fewer NVIDIA chips than like the big LLMs that are in the United States. So here's an example of the numbers that are involved. If you take one single speech recognition machine learning model these days, just one model, the number of math operations like adds or multiplies to accomplish it is greater than the number of grains of sand on Earth. And the current NVIDIA Blackwell processor has processing speeds of 144 petaflops. That's 144 followed by a lot of zeros. And just thinking about the computation aspect of that is just incredible at that foundational level. So that DeepSeek example of how many tokens it was trained upon and so forth, we can estimate how many hours of GPU time that it required to calculate that whole DeepSeek model. And right now there's this big construction project happening in Texas called Stargate. It's going to hold 400,000 GPUs. And once that's up and operational, it will be able to train DeepSeek level training in a single day. So it's just incredible how fast this stuff is kind of growing in intelligence. And I'll come back to that in a moment here. But just the fact that it can think so fast and it can process so much knowledge, it's getting faster every single day. So at the Google conference a month or two ago, Sundar Pichai did a presentation, and he showed the number of tokens that are processed per month. AI works down at this token level, which is part of a word, basically. So, and this graph is just 1 year. So a year ago, they were processing 9.7 trillion tokens, and now they're processing 480 trillion tokens. A million tokens is about 750,000 words. And so 487 trillion tokens processed is about 500 million copies of War and Peace in a single month. So again, to the speed of how fast this stuff is maturing, in the past 12 months alone, ChatGPT has added these capabilities. So memory, now my ChatGPT remembers who I am, it remembers my job, it remembers where I live and stuff like that. It's able to handle reasoning and complex tasks. Agents are things that will do multiple things. So I just used agent mode a couple days ago. Some friends and we are planning a trip next year, and I just gave it some prompts, and it gave me a 12-day itinerary. It was just pretty incredible. It took 13 minutes, and it fires off all these agents to go out and search the web, as well as search its knowledge base and do all of that. If anybody hasn't used it yet, the capability to do spreadsheet analysis and to summarize spreadsheets and data, it's incredible. It's now not just trained just on, like historical data. It enables dynamic web searching to get added to the context of answering a question. And of course, it's become, multimodal now. So, you can do images and voice and things like that. So, today it's this right-hand side here that everybody is kind of used to, and it's what everybody is using. So ChatGPT, Claude, etc. They're trained on all the web content and any content that they can get. In November of 2024, Anthropic, who's the maker of Claude, they're one of the leading frontier models, came out with a specification called MCP. And what MCP does is basically allow these large language models to talk to transactional systems and to get access to the database. And a transactional system, a very good example of that is RunSignup. So we've got this huge database with 2,700 tables and a couple million lines of code. And basically what we're going to do over time, and I'll talk about this more in a minute, is we're going to expose MCPs and MCP tools and have an MCP server that all these large language models can call. And so they're trained on not just the content that's out there, but they also have access to the real raw data. One final slide here on kind of history and future. This is really a picture of the future. And my next slide is I have a bunch of references, and these slides will go out tomorrow, and you'll be able to click on all these links and stuff like that. It's probably several months ago, this paper came out, AI 2027. It came out from a group of AI researchers that have a track record of being remarkably accurate or close enough to accurate on predictions over the past 5 years of where AI is heading. And the thing about AI and everything kind of getting faster is what the focus of this paper is. And this chart here, and it's a really interesting paper. So as you scroll through the paper, the month changes here, and all this data kind of changes. So this is a snapshot from August of 2026, so a year from now. And this is a snapshot of October 2027. And so basically what's going to happen over the next year is we're going to move from an unreliable agent to a reliable agent type of a mode. And what that means is that a lot of people will dismiss AI and they'll say, oh, it hallucinates, it's not doing it exactly right and stuff like that. But guess what? It's getting better. The AI you use today is the worst AI you will ever use. These little cheat things here, if it's a whole unit, that means that an AI agent is greater than a human hacker. So by August of 2026, an AI agent a coding agent will be equivalent to about 1.6 times some of the best developers in the world. This talks also about the speed that these agents are working at. So the 50,000 reliable agents is kind of this. They have this idea of creating a kind of superhuman AI, and so that superhuman AI is going to have 50,000 agents available to it, and all 50,000 are going to be thinking at 15 times human speed. If we go out to October 27, the numbers are just incredible. So what it's saying is that they're going to be able to have the capability of having 330,000 superhuman AI researchers. So you take the guys that Meta is paying $100 million a year for, and they're going to have 330,000 of those, but each of them is going to be operating at 57 times human speed. Now, whether all this happens quite this quickly is, kind of to be determined. But I think it's fair to say that it's going to keep getting faster and better. So I'd really recommend that if you're interested in AI and you want a foundation, that you start with this co-intelligence book. And I think it gives a good overall framework. It's optimistic. It's written by this professor from Penn and who's been following this from the very beginning. And I think it puts it into human terms and human context and stuff like that. The Acquired podcast is one of my favorite podcasts. There's 2 podcasts in particular. The NVIDIA episodes, there's 3 episodes. Each of the episodes are 3 hours long, so put it on fast speed. But especially number 3 talks about current NVIDIA, and it talks about, just the adoption of AI technology. It talks about some of the raw compute capability and how it's put together and so forth. The other Acquired podcast, which is a podcast I listened to in March, it was from Vercel, which is one of these vibe coding tools that I'll talk about in a minute. And then Dario Modi is the Anthropic founder. Lex Friedman did a fascinating interview with him. And then Dennis Habasis is the head of Google DeepMind. And there's a fascinating hard fork podcast with Dennis. So there's kind of a starter list for you. Take you a day or two to get through all of that. But if you're interested in AI, it's a good foundation. So there's your background at AI, of the history and how it's working today and where it's going in the future. So AI seems like a lot of change coming. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to take AI and all this stuff that's happening, and we're trying to make it useful for our customers. So I went to this Thomas Friedman talk in 2016. And so this is almost 10 years old, right? And at that point in time, the purpose of the talk was really, the theme of the talk was technology is changing faster than we humans can adapt to it. And in this talk, he talked about how, like, the agricultural revolution took like 100 years. 150 years ago, we were all farming, and now very few of us are farming, right? But it took 100 years for that to happen. The rate of change that we're experiencing now does not give us time as humans to keep up with the technology. The fact that there's going to be 330,000, superhuman AIs that are each 57 times a regular human is just not something that humans can process. Like, I have a tough time processing that, and like what it means and everything. All I know is that it's going to happen. Whether it's that fast or not, who knows? But it's going to happen, and we want to figure out how to make use of that within the context of our lives, right? And our life is trying to give our customers technology for their events. I think somewhat good news here is that with the increasing amount of AI, I think there's going to be more need than ever for humans to be able to get together. So I think the kind of the community that we all have here, with us building technology for events and you all operating events, I think is going to be robust. I think humans are going to need each other more than ever. So that portends well, I think, for all of us. So the first steps for RunSignup. So how do we get into this thing? So in April of 24, we enabled GitHub Copilot. As I said, we probably got between a 0 and 5% productivity increase from that. In May of 24, a couple of our customers recommended this chatbot to us for support. It's called Q.ai. And what it did is it allowed these customers to ingest all of their content on their event websites and then put a little button on the website and people could ask the question there rather than sending an email. So like, when's packet pickup? Where's packet pickup? What time does the race start? Where's the parking? All those types of common questions that you get were now being automatically answered by this AI chatbot. And so I got friendly with the owner of Q.ai, Daniel Beasley, and as I'll tell you later, he recently joined our company. In December 2024, I was talking with my good friend Rich Friedman. Rich and I have worked at a couple of technology companies in the past. Rich is one of the smartest people I've ever worked with, and he's always kind of like on the advanced side, right? And he's telling me, Bob, AI has gotten to the point that it's changing how software development should be done. And I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. You have to show the development team at RunSignup. So I think it was January 21st. We scheduled a web meeting, and Friedman gave a demo of basically taking a RunSignup API, get races, the thing that all of our affiliate calendar partners use to go and say what races are on RunSignup. And within minutes, he developed an application. He didn't write a line of code. He just prompted it, like like most people on the call probably use ChatGPT at least a little bit. Just like you prompt ChatGPT, he was prompting this tool called Cursor to actually write code and output that code. And then he executed that code, and he had built a little bitty race calendar in minutes. So after that meeting, productivity sank to 0 at RunSignup for the week, because most of the developers went off and started playing with Cursor and trying it on their side projects and stuff like that. And everybody comes back. I remember Matt Morrison telling me, my job has changed. I'm not worried about my job being at RunSignup, but my job has changed. So in February of 25, we put this into place formally inside of RunSignup. We had a bunch of custom rules that Cursor can learn from, and a bunch of security precautions to make sure that we weren't giving out passwords and stuff like that. So here's an example. So we have a design system in RunSignup, and the design system is basically all the different visual components, like a drop-down menu or a button or a list or a text field or anything, calendar date picker or something like that. And it's defined, and we do that traditionally so that everything kind of looks the same, and a developer who's developing a new dashboard page is able to reuse these reusable components very quickly and easily. So we gave that to Cursor, and then the diagram on the left is basically just like a sketch. So Darren and Jeff Kiesel are UX developers. They use Figma, and they just come up with a graphical representation. They feed that graphical representation into Cursor, and Cursor actually generates this screen here on the right-hand side that uses all of our standard components, like that. Incredible. We're estimating that we're getting about a 20% productivity improvement today from Cursor. And all of you on the call are benefiting from that because we're able to write more code. We're spending some of that time to basically go learn more about AI and try to improve it even more. These numbers, so Cursor has started generating some stats that we can look at kind of on a monthly basis. And this first line is the number of suggested lines of code in June and July, and you can see the growth here. And this growth is partly coming from developers gaining trust in Cursor and asking it more and more. And then this is the number of lines accepted. So, so you don't necessarily accept everything that Cursor suggests to you. You reject some of it, and sometimes it's just like, it's meant to get over a mental block of how do I solve this problem or something. So it's throwaway code, but it's still significant in terms of the number of lines of code. So I think we have 2 or 2.5 million lines of code here. The fact that 100,000 lines of code were created is significant. And then tabs accepted. So it's like when you start to type something and you hit tab and it will complete it. Sometimes that completion is like 10 or 20 lines of code. So the amount of productivity that we're getting internally is significant from AI, and it's going to continue to build. And basically the way that we're going to be developing is the developers will write less code and review more code. So the second thing that we did in AI, besides use it ourselves for development purposes, is we said, well, how can AI consume and interact with our system? And so it turns out that there's kind of this newer API standard called OpenAPI. We started our API 15 years ago. So basically what we've done is we've written like this little open API wrapper on top of our standard API. And by having this defined in open API, it allows the large language models and the AI systems to be able to understand our system better. So when you say get race information, or if you have secure access, get participant information from some sort of application, AI-driven application agent, it's going through this open API. And so we benefit a fair amount, and our customers, I think, benefit from it because we have this mature, robust, scalable, fast API. And we put this little wrapper on top of it to basically open it up to AI systems. And then the other thing that we've done is we've put this OAuth 2 capability in, and that basically provides a mechanism that provides security. So Joel right now is adding something to the Laravel PHP community that makes it really easy to do this. We're working on something that makes it really easy to do this in V0. But basically what you'll be able to do is develop an application, and I'll explain that on the next slide. But you'll be able to develop an application, and a RunSignup login screen will appear. So you'll be able to treat an application just like you do the RunSignup dashboard. Let me go to this diagram.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about this, if you could, we had a question about explaining more regarding like what you said, what you meant when you said get race. And then I think also just clarifying what is public and what is private that you have to authenticate in order to build these applications would be helpful.
Sure. So let me go to the RunSignup API, and this is a little technical, but
also don't steal my presentation.
No, I won't. So there's all these APIs here, right? And some of these APIs are public, meaning that results is an example of a public API. And there's a race information that you can call, that's kind of that has this method called get races. And what get races does is it allows you to say get me races within a particular time frame, or has different certain types of fields, and then return that list of races to me.
And the API is really mature, so it respects things like draft race and private race, so it will ignore those things and include, and similar with results, where it will ignore anonymous and include public.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what I mean by we have this robust API that lots and lots of our partners have been coding to for many many years, and so it's really easy to do. So if it's one of those public ones like results, then you don't need to have people log in to RunSignup to do that. If you want to get access to race participants, well, geez, you want people to log in to get a list of the race participants. And that's where you would come back to this picture of wanting to have an OAuth login mechanism. So in the old days, people had to be really smart to use the API. They had to develop all their own code themselves. But I was telling about the demo that Rich did using Cursor. Cursor is probably too hard for non-developers to use. But I was listening to this podcast in March about Vercel and V0, and it was like, so you can vibe code. And so it was a rainy Saturday, and I ignored Marlies for half a day, and vibe coded, and I vibe coded a find a race application. And it was kind of amazing because in, I think, an hour and a half, I actually had a simple race calendar up and working. And basically what it does is you point the tool at, Open API, at Open API. And if you want to do a login type of an application, like a backend database application, you add in OAuth 2. And we've done a bunch of these little applications as examples for our customers. We don't want to have these applications used in production. We want them to be learning experiments, and we want customers to be able to take those examples and do it themselves. And we understand that not many people are going to vibe code, but a few people will want to vibe code. And what's cool is that it's open. The RunSignup platform is open for vibe coding. And what this means is that you can create your own applications. And those own applications can be front-end oriented, like what's the list of races, or who are the top fundraisers for my event. So say you don't like the way that our top fundraisers looks on the website, you can create your own if you want to, right? And the nice thing about V0 is that you vibe code in it, and it's instantly alive and has a URL, and you can share it, and other people can look at that. So it's amazing to be able to go from just nothing to something, an application that's accessing the data on RunSignup in a matter of an hour or two. So you recall I talked about MCP and that coming out in November, and this is a fast evolving area of the world. So what we are doing is we're putting in place a RunSignup MCP server, and we actually have that running internally right now. And we have it for get races and for get the detailed race info on a page, as well as for results. And so an AI agent means like a large language model or a vibe coded application. And so MCPs, as we release them publicly, will be easier to have these vibe coding tools consume, and certainly be a whole lot easier for the large language models to consume than our Open API even.
You can tell me to ignore this, but Ryan asked a good question here, and it's kind of asking, like, it sounds like vibe coding and the tools are headed in a direction where we can basically just build our own user interface.
Yes.
So where does RunSignup kind of fit into the picture if we can just kind of build our own thing in the next couple of months, years, whatever?
Yeah, I think that there's kind of two places that we fit. I think one place is just the infrastructure and data and security that we have. And I think the other kind of thing is just, it's tough to replicate all the features and functionality that are in RunSignup. and it's tough to, because we increasingly are going to be using faster AI development tools. They're going to be more foundational and kind of higher throughput in terms of like the code execution and stuff. Like if we vibe coded all of RunSignup, it would crash. I guarantee you, right? So I think that what we're trying to do is say that transactional and database systems have a real place in the world, and you need this foundation, right? So you could potentially vibe code 2,700 database tables and 2.5 million lines of code, but that's a lot to vibe code. And then the other aspect of it is that you just take, so in another, I think 4 months, I get to write a blog post that says the total number of years that people at RunSignup have worked at RunSignup is going to reach 5 centuries, 500 years. So we just have like a lot of domain knowledge. We have like tens of thousands of events that are telling us things that they need. And it's tough to kind of gain that community of knowledge and to vibe code something yourself. So having this kind of solid, rock solid foundational part of the future, I think plays an important part. And you can't rely upon LLMs totally either, because they're not transactional. I'll show a diagram here in a minute, and I'll talk a little bit more about this. Let me go back to MCPs now. So basically what MCPs are doing is they're taking a natural worded prompt and they are feeding that over to the MCP. The MCP basically translates that into our API that goes into our database, returns some sort of answer to the MCP. The MCP translates that to the LLM, and then the LLM makes that a naturally worded response. So we came up with this diagram, and if you look at the left-hand side of this diagram, that's the current world. It's a transactional world. It's a static world. So participants, ticket buyers, event directors all go in through dashboards and Google search and stuff like that. They access the RunSignup database, right? And they do this by having drop-down menus and text fields that they enter and things like that. As we release this AI MCP service, what's going to happen is it's going to enable the AI world to have interactive, dynamic interaction with the RunSignup platform. And in some ways, what is eventually going to happen is that you're going to be able to have chat sessions with RunSignup. So you can almost think of it as a new user interface. So we actually had this running, the chatbot at the Scott Coffee Run this year, a month ago. And so people could ask for their results. So I could say, what was Jordan Desolat's time? And I could ask that in a natural language to the AI chatbot. And then it would actually pull the results and it would say exactly what Steven's time was. I could ask it, who is faster, Andrew Sigwart or Steven Sigwart? And it would laugh at me and it would say Steven Sigwart, of course. But it's kind of this new way of interacting with our data and our system. And I think that you need both worlds. You need a transactional static world because you need to know where the money's coming from and where the money's going, right? At the fundamental level. You need to have it be exact. This more interactive world can be a little bit looser, but it needs to rely upon the data that's part of this transactional world. So basically, that's what we've done is we've introduced a RunSignup AI chatbot. I'm not going to get into lots of details here. There was another webinar a week or so ago that drilled down on that, and I'm sure we're going to be having more of that. We're currently preparing to push that out to beta in probably middle of August. There's a wait list, and you can join that wait list at runsignup.com/chatbot. This is based upon QAI, and Daniel Beasley has joined our company full-time. And what we are doing is we are integrating what he's done tightly into our system. So it's going to be automatically trained on all the website V2 information in a very effective and efficient way. And it's going to give you a bunch of new dashboard pages in your RunSignup dashboard and TicketSignup dashboard that will enable you to see what the chat history was, to improve the chat, responses and results and things like that. Over time, what we're going to do is connect more and more event type data. So here's the example of asking for Jordan's time, and it shows that Jordan finished 16th at 29:05. One of those early users of QAI said that it saved them 5 to 10 hours a week. This is Dave Hutnick, who has a number of races, so it's not just like one race and he saved 5 hours a week. So the AI chatbot will look like this on the front end. So it will either be like this little bubble down here in the lower right-hand corner that you're familiar with, or it will be a page, that component that you can put on any page in the website V2. The RunSignup AI ticket chatbot is basically meant to answer these repetitive questions. Where's packet pickup? Where do I park? What time does the 10K start? Are dogs allowed on the course? What are the awards? What are your refund policies? Where's my confirmation email? All these types of things can be taken off of human plate, and most event directors are stretched thin anyway. They either have another job or they're trying to start up a new race if they're making money off of this, and they don't have that much time. So to free up time is really what we're trying to leverage AI for events for with this product. So what's also interesting is that we're feeding it dynamic data. So this is the data that's coming from the database. And initially, this is all going to be just like the public type of information, and over time, we're going to be working in that OAuth 2 capability to allow people to basically log in via their chatbots. We're also developing a new component for website V2. It's going to be a frequently asked questions component, and we'll have a bunch of kind of standard questions that you can click on, and we'll have kind of a standard starter answer to it. And then on the front end, it will just display all those frequently asked questions. So longer term, this chatbot turns into a real customer service agent. So it's going to be able to do real functionality that today you do in RunSignup, menus and things like that. An example is, can you transfer my bib to a friend? Can you move my registration from the full to the half? Now, all of this is going to be requiring, people to basically authenticate themselves via OAuth 2. And today you can think of that as the login screen. But over time, there's going to be different ways to authenticate yourself with text, or with the chatbot itself. It will remember your login and things like that. Over time, we will introduce an AI agent for event directors. So think of it as a way of starting to interact with your data. Think of questions like, can you show me the past 5 years of people under the age of 30 that participated in my event, and show me a trend graph of that? So the example in the future is going to be, transfer me to the marathon. You're going to say that to first our chat bot, but eventually you'll be able to say it to any LLM out there, and I'll talk about that in a minute. It will talk to the MCP server, which will call our API, call our database, transfer it back to MCP, back to the LLM, and it will come back and it will say, hey, congratulations, you transferred in the marathon. Go for the gold. So what's the RunSignup AI future? So what will happen eventually is that that MCP will be able to be discovered by all the large language models. So there's some evolving early work on this, and eventually it will become standardized, and we'll be able to basically put our MCP into a registry, and that registry is where ChatGPT will call and say, hey, tell me about RunSignup. And so this will basically enable a whole bunch of these LLMs, all the chats systems out there, to interact with our public API type of stuff, our public information, like the list of races, what times a race starts. If there's a frequently asked question to allow dogs, then it will show that and things like that. We think that this will improve event searching. Today, what happens is that ChatGPT, and we see this in our logs, ChatGPT comes and scrapes all of our websites. So it's looking for all the events that you guys have on our platform, and it's trying to parse that and put that into their database. And so if you go to ChatGPT and say, find me races on RunSignup in Morristown, New Jersey in the next 6 months, it will do a halfway decent job of coming back to you. Once we have the MCP and the real data coming in, we think that that event searching is going to be even better. So think of it like Google search, but on steroids, and it be the new Google search. Well, I'm talking about Jordan Desolate's, his wife, Jamie, he was saying, has kind of stopped using Google and now uses ChatGPT for all of her searching, right? So, and we're starting to see this in the trends in our data, is that more and more people, it's still maybe like only 1%, are finding events and signing up for them via ChatGPT and Gemini. The most actions done in the AI chatbot, all those actions, or most of them, will also be available in ChatGPT. So all the stuff that we talked about in the chatbot, people will be able to ask just in their own ChatGPT. And increasingly, I think you'll find that people will have their own personal GPT or set of GPTs that they use, and that's really will be their home base. They won't necessarily want to come to a website and interact that way. They'll become more and more comfortable with the chat interfaces, and I think you see that OpenAI bought Johnny Ive's company for $6.5 billion. They didn't do that just because he's a funny guy or something. They did that because they want to invest in the next generation of interaction models that are going to come out and be enabled by LLMs. You see a lot of people like Meta and Google and Apple investing in glasses and eyewear and things like that as a mechanism to interact with AI. And we think that that's going to continue, and that new things that we can't even foresee right now are going to come into the future and produce kind of new interaction models. So like, if you think about how you used to sign up only on websites, and then people started using their phones, and there was this new model, and you had to adjust your code, and you had to adjust your user interface to be mobile friendly, you're going to have to become AI friendly as an event. All right, I got through it all. It was long. I hope it wasn't too long.
Yeah, it's a bit long. I think I interrupted with some of the questions that were asked during this. So we'll hang out here for another second. I guess one question that was asked is RunSignup APIs, especially MCP, are they only designed to allow race companies to vibe code, or does it allow third parties to create RunSignup based tools for many race directors?
Yes, absolutely. So, we think that some of the earliest adopters will be timing companies that want to custom build their own like results interface or some sort of kiosk and stuff. And Soren has actually built a couple of little applications to do, like results printing kiosk and stuff like that he vibe coded and are shared on our website.
Yeah, and the work that we're doing with OAuth 2 and with MCPs is to make that even friendlier so that you can build applications and offer them just generally.
Yeah, I expect like a larger and larger ecosystem. There's kind of a decent sized ecosystem around RunSignup and our API today. I think it's going to increase manyfold over the next 5 years.
Um, I don't know if you want to do any more questions.
Yeah, so one of the questions is what are
Yeah.
the energy impacts of AI and things like that? And yeah, AI is going to use a lot of energy. Um, I think, you know, I think the reality is that it's going to use a lot of energy. I think the hopeful way of looking at that is that um, the benefits of AI will actually outweigh the use of energy. The super strong AI proponents think that there's the potential to solve a lot more human problems with harnessing the power of AI and to potentially solve problems like energy generation in a better way. So I tend to stick with the hopeful side of it. I also kind of tend to stick with the practical side of it, and the practical side of it is that AI is going to keep rolling. There's too much money behind it. There's too much benefit behind it that you know, there's obviously concerns for safety. There's concerns for energy. There's concerns for hallucination. If you click the red button at the end of the AI 2027, you'll see there's a lot more existential concerns that could be had out there. Um, I I feel like it's de facto. It's just gonna happen, and so within my tiny world of what I can uh, kind of deal with is I'm going to embrace it and I'm going to make sure that RunSignup is a company that really embraces it and tries to figure out how to harness the power of it for the benefit of our customers and events generally.
Um, so I guess like maybe to wrap up, we have a question. Where do you think the rest of the industry is on embracing AI registration and specifically?
Oh, that's a softball, Allison.
I know it was not me. Like that's
It's a
literally
real
what
it's a
he
real
asked
question.
that.
So I think you know I think we're in a really good spot, and I'll talk probably a little bit too long on this answer. I think that we've got three fundamental reasons why I think we will be a little bit faster than our competitors. One reason is our API. So our API is so much more robust, so much full fledged than anybody else in the industry, any of the ticket vendors or any of the registration vendors. It's fast. It's there could be more APIs and there will be more APIs because of this, but nobody's even close to us in terms of the robustness of the APIs. I have not seen anybody, including big companies like Eventbrite, talk about putting an open API wrapper on their APIs. So, and we did that months ago, and so we're kind of ahead on that API front. I and then if you look at MCPs, nobody else is talking about MCPs except us in the event industry. And I know they're not that useful for people yet. And our chatbot will make them more useful, but the MCPs will kind of be hidden behind the scenes, and nobody will really know why they get good answers for results and stuff. But but it is fundamentally important. It's just work that needs to be done, and we're kind of ahead. I skipped over a name in that, and in one of my slides when I was talking about Daniel Beasley, it was John Marin. So John Marin's an old friend of mine. We worked together at Bluestone, and he recently decided to retire from Oracle. He's one of the smartest software developers I've ever worked with. When I was at Bluestone, he was kind of leading our work on EJB, which is kind of a very fancy API, if you will. And so he was going to retire. He was thinking of becoming like a greeter at Home Depot or something. And we were like, we have this intern program where we usually bring in like college students, but why don't you come in and try working here for 3 months, and you don't have to work full time if you don't want. Anyway, he joined us in January and has decided that he really likes it here and that he can contribute a lot. And so he's sticking around full time. And it's really nice to have him for a couple reasons. One is he didn't have existing projects on his plate. And secondly, I'm not sure I could think of a better person in the world, literally. And I know a fair amount of technology people and software developers. I'm not sure I could find a better person in the world to do the Open API implementation and to do the MCP implementation. He's humble, he's grounded, he's smart, he gets along well with people. He's shorter than I am, so he's just a winner, and he just kind of fell into our laps. And I don't know that anybody else has somebody like that. While I'm on people, I got to say that our culture is attuned to being very accepting of high rates of change. We have a great deal of trust in our company, and I don't think that anybody in our company is worried about their job because it may go away or something like that. So I think that that's a really fundamental part of it. And then, people have always made fun of me over the years for writing so many blogs and having so much content. And they make fun of Andrew Sigwart creating all these videos and everything. But the fact is that we've got somewhere close to 5,000 pieces of content that is now in that's now in all these LLMs. And so when people are asking questions, there's RunSignup information buried inside of all the LLMs. And for this chatbot that we're coming out with for our customer base, we have all this content that we can point people to when customers are saying, how do I reset my password or something like that? And all of that is something that I see a lot of our competitors, their content and their marketing is more marketing oriented, and it's less kind of education oriented and less product oriented. And having all that content out there gives us an unusual advantage. So I will stop my rant there, but I think we're in a really good spot. I think we have a lot of smart people here. I think we're adapting quickly and we're moving quickly. And I think we're set up as well as anybody could be set up for success here. And I really do think it's going to have a major impact on our customers. I know myself, I'm just totally energized by this. It's just comes along at such a perfect time. And in our evolution and everything, we've got this, kind of big, stable company now that's profitable, all employee owned, no outside investors. We can just pay attention to the technology and do what's right for our customers and, make use of the technology. So I've droned on a long time. Johanna, do you see anything, or Jen, do you see anything that I should answer or talk about?
I don't think there was anything else specific, and Allison answered most of them.
I've droned on long enough. Sorry to bore you or to overwhelm you or to make you scared, but read the AI 2027 paper and hit the red button if you really want to be scared. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Now Joel here, one of our developers, has something he wants to say.
Like and subscribe. Don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button. Hello, Internet. I'm here.
I should just have you record that for all the videos.